Good morning, everyone. Well, it was wonderful here yesterday. There's no doubt about it. The place was flooded with divine mercy and love. And I think all our hearts were lightened, and there was a great joy and great spirit and great atmosphere here. And even though we had a long day, I think we all went home full of life and energized and joyful. So this morning, before we begin, I would like us to close our eyes for just 1 minute. Just to allow that same divine mercy and love to cover us, to gush forth upon us, and to envelop us. And let us join the love that we have in our own hearts, and the goodness and the generosity and the giftedness that flows through each one of us because of God's love for us. And let us put it all together and send it to heal all those that we have promised to pray for. All those that have asked our prayers. All those in need of our prayers. And all those who are dying today and may be in danger of losing their souls. And Sister Faustina asked the Lord that every stitch she took on her crochet, that a soul would be released from purgatory. So I would like all of us to ask this morning that because of our love and the abundant love and mercy of our Divine Lord, that the gates in purgatory would be opened, and that because of our presence here and our love, that many, many souls, especially those who are near and dear to us, those who definitely we would be praying for if we knew they were there, those who have no one to pray for them, and those who are there a long time, that they will see the face of God in heaven today. We will also send the divine love and our own love to the north of Ireland, that peace may be established there, and to Iraq, Saddam Hussein's heart may be softened, and that they might get peace instead of war. Lord, we ask you to be with us this day and with the whole world. I was delighted when I saw them place Our Lady here this morning, because I know that she has a huge part to play in dishing out all that wonderful mercy and love that is poured out over the whole world. And it reminded me of the story that when St. Joseph was put minding the gate in heaven, and the Lord said to him, only those who have lived the way they were meant to live, and only those who have merited heaven are to come in. And then he began to see day after day several people there that he felt should never have come. So he went to St. Joseph anyway, and he gave him a bit of a lecture that he wasn't doing his job well enough. And poor old Joseph took it all and said nothing. So after another week or so, the Lord came back, and he really got on to St. Joseph the next time. And he said, look, he said, I depended on you, and you're not doing your job. So I suppose Joseph had enough. So he turned to the Lord and he said, look, he said, what's the use, he said, for me standing at the gate when your mother is around at the back wall with her beads out over it, pulling them all in? I think a lot of us, when our time comes, will be going around by the back wall and we'll be depending on her rosary beads. For me anyway, I'll certainly be depending on her. I suppose being brought up in an ordinary country place and living a simple life, I am attached to the things that are simple and ordinary. And I remember the years that I did my exams, my leaving cert or my inter cert, or a few exams I did when I was nursing. At the beginning of them years, I always bought a penny notebook. There were penny notebooks that time. A little small notebook, and I fit it into my pocket. And in the course of the year, as we were doing our studies, I jotted down a few little headings here and there that I felt were important, that would give me a start for questions that we might get in an exam. And at any time I could take out the notebook and give a look through it during the year. And when it came to revision time, I just looked down through my notebook, and I found it was a great help. But I can remember that at leaving cert, some few of us were doing honours English, and I was one of them. And we were supposed to do our honours English poetry and some other things ourselves. Because the whole class weren't doing it, it was left to ourselves to do it. And anything that was left to myself in the line of books, I didn't do an awful lot with it. So when it came to the day that we got the paper to do our honours English poetry, my friend said to me, of course, when I opened the paper, because I hadn't opened the books during the year, I didn't even recognize the questions. And my friend who was sitting in front of me, Kathleen McGill, said to me afterwards, Eileen, she said, it was the first time in my whole life that I saw your face and that you hadn't some way out. I had no way out because I hadn't done my work. But I learned a great lesson from that. Many times since, I thought, how would I feel when I come to meet the Lord if I found out that I hadn't done my work? It was easy enough. There were other papers that helped me to make up in the leaving cert, and even if I didn't get it, it was no big deal. But I'd hate to think that I'd come and meet my Lord and Maker if I hadn't done my work. So today I'll share with you just a few little things that through the mercy and the love of God I discovered, and I keep in a little notebook in my mind's eye. About 2 years after I joined the Sisters of Mercy in Athy, one day I was sitting down doing what I had done for 20 minutes every day, from 20 to 12 until 12 o'clock. We had time to do what we called our particular examen. I'm sure the nuns here will be familiar with it. That meant we were to sit down and examine our consciences, and we were supposed to root out our predominant passion. Now, I don't know what the situation was, but I never really came to terms with finding out what my predominant passion was. Maybe I was a bit like the fellow in the county home who, when the priest came around for the first Fridays for confession, he said to Pat was standing at the end of the bed, "Are you going to confession, Pat?" And Pat says to him, "There's no convenience here for sin," he said. There were so many restrictions for them. So maybe I thought the same, that I didn't have any convenience for sin. Or I didn't have, more likely, the humility to see what was wrong with me at that time. But after 2 years sitting down there, I got the grace to see that I was going nowhere, and I had wasted all that time. And it came to me that morning that I had the ability to love people, that I could love people. So I said to myself, I'm going to forget about all the things that are wrong with me from this day forward. And I'm going to do the best I can to love everyone I meet as best I can. And today I know that that was a great grace for me, and that was the beginning of Cúnmhara. That was the day it began inside me, because Cúnmhara is all about being attentive to what is best in us, best in ourselves, and best in everybody around us. That's where it begins and ends. And the people who come to Cúnmhara, if you were to ask me to put it into one sentence, why do they have to come there? They have to come there because they don't know their value and their worth, because of their poor self-image. For some reason or another, they don't like themselves, and there seems to be a record playing at the back of their heads. No good, no good, no good. You were never any good. You'll never be any good. And of course, when we don't know who we are, we have to destroy ourselves. We self-destruct. And people who don't know who they are and are not aware of their goodness, they destroy themselves with addictions and the like. So people come to Cúnmhara in order to find out their goodness. And those of you who lived and have lived with alcoholism or drug addiction, you know how difficult it is, because the very thing that people need who are suffering from alcoholism is to be loved. But they do all the things that sort of prevent us from loving them. Because of their self-hatred, when they have a few drinks taken, they probably come home and sometimes say all the horrible things they can think of. And it's hard to take unless you understand that all the things they're saying to you, they're actually saying about themselves. There was a time when I might get annoyed if somebody came in intoxicated and said something to me I didn't like. But for many years now, if anybody who is intoxicated says something to me like that, I automatically say to myself, what is it inside in this person that's making them say this? What has gone wrong for them? Because they're not talking about me. They're talking about what they think about themselves. And it is so important for us not to take it personal. Never take personal anything that is said to you by somebody who is intoxicated, because they're only in some sort of twisted way trying to bring another person down to the level that they feel themselves are at. They need our love. They need our help. They need us to say things like, you know, if they're angry or contrary, you're a gentle person, you're a kind person, you don't have to be like that. I can remember one woman who used to come to Al-Anon, and she told us, I knew her husband very well. He was a very good friend of mine, actually, and he helped a lot to help put the first Cúnmhara together. But she said she used to be at home at night waiting for him to come home, because when he came home, he usually put his foot through the television or the china cabinet or something like that. And she used to be at home waiting for him to come, and she'd be knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting and building up a whole lot of anger and annoyance inside her. So, of course, by the time he came in, the whole atmosphere would be so tense, and the children would be so tense, and everything would be so tense that they would be fit to have an explosion. And, of course, when he came home, he set off the explosion real fast by hitting something a kick, maybe a chair or something. But she told me that once she went to Al-Anon, and once she learned how to do some work on herself, and once she began to understand that it was as difficult for him to stay away from taking a drink as it was for her to stop trying to change him or to stop saying the unkind word. There was no more violence in that home. It all ended because she had learned how to diffuse the situation She had learned how to do her own work, and she had created an environment that he could come home to without knowing that he was going to be attacked. So that was the first thing. The first little line in my notebook is to be as best I can at any given time and to come as best I can for my love. I suppose that led me down other ways and other avenues. For a lot of my lifetime, I thought about God as somebody way out there, almighty, omnipotent, all-powerful, all the things that would bring him miles and miles away from someone like me. So I left God out there, and I did all my dealings with Our Lady and the Lord himself. It was easier for me because, well, Our Lady was a woman who lived like the rest of us do. And the Lord himself, I suppose, was the finest man on earth. For me anyway, the finest man on earth. And I felt that he had invited me to live the life I live. And I was always so grateful to have Our Lady. I felt she was a mother-in-law to me. A mother-in-law like no one else ever had or ever could have. The likes of her, who understood her son so well, who could lead me to understanding and knowing him better. So I left God where he was, for many's the long day, until one evening I was going down the road in Athy, and it just came to me that God is love and God is truth. And that when I'm living from my love, I'm living from the God in me, that part of me that's made like God. And when I'm living from my truth, I'm doing the same. But when I'm not living from my love or my truth, I'm separated from my God. I know I learned in the Catechism that God created us all equal. I can remember in school looking around the classroom and that thought running through my mind, God created us all equal. While I saw that some of the girls were brilliant and great at doing their study, some were dressed to the last, while more of us were just that bit more shabby, or we didn't have our lessons the same way, or maybe we didn't have the same intelligence. And I thought to myself, this doesn't look one bit like being equal. But I discovered over the years that these are not the things that make us equal. And I discovered that God was not a way out there. You know, none of us complain because the powerhouses, the electric current is not in our houses, or it's not, the powerhouse is not in our backyard. As a matter of fact, I don't think we'd be comfortable if the powerhouse for Dublin, the power station for Dublin was in our backyard. Definitely we wouldn't if it was in the house. But because the power station is way out there, it doesn't mean that we can't turn on and use as much current as we wish. It's up to us to use the amount. And as current as we use it, more is coming. I began to realize that we are in fact, as the Catechism says, made to the image and likeness of God. That as human beings, we are body and soul. We can all see what our bodies are like. And even those who don't believe very much about souls, if you take up the newspaper today and you read the death column, you'll see the remains will be removed. Or someday it will be written up for ourselves. The remains will be removed at such a time. But we don't talk about remains if there isn't something else gone somewhere. So what is gone somewhere but our souls? As human beings, there's part of us made to the image and likeness of God. And if that's not divine mercy, what is? to think that you and I are made to the image and likeness of God. It's almost beyond believing. I suppose if for 1 second we could comprehend what it is to be a human being and what it is to be made like God himself, we wouldn't be able to contain ourselves in this room. Surely we wouldn't. But as I see it today, I see that we are all connected to the powerhouse of God himself, and that there is no end to the love and the gentleness and the kindness and the truth and the beauty and the wonder and the giftedness that's running through all of us, all our lives, if we tap into it. Of course, there's no use in having the current running into the house if you don't know how to turn on the switch. And there's no use in having an electric saw if you don't know how to turn it on when you want to cut a piece of timber. Some of us spend all our lives living at a human level. We're like a farmer trying to mow a meadow with a hedge clippers, or somebody trying to cut down a big tree with a little fret saw, instead of turning on the rotary mower or the power saw. That power is available to all of us. That unlimited power that never runs out. The more we give it away, the more you and I today choose to give away our love, our goodness, our gentleness, our kindness, the more we'll experience it for ourselves, and the more we'll have to give away tomorrow. It is only God could invent something that the more of it you give away, the more of it you have left to give. And that is what it is for us to be human beings. There's an unlimited power and an unlimited source welling up inside us all the time. And it is our privilege and our duty to pass it on to the whole world. And that's really what Kunvara is all about. It's living at a soul level, living from our love, our goodness, our kindness, our gentleness, our generosity. And at this time, I'm sure, because it's the theme of this conference, that God is calling us. I think he is calling us to an understanding and realization of the giftedness that is within us, and calling us to give it away to other people. It's there in abundance. We can give it away in our own homes. We can give it away in our own neighborhoods. Kunvara is not about a place. It's the Kunvara, it's the Kun harbour within every one of us. It's the kingdom within. And of course, I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I put in a little commercial. If any of you wish to give it away in a place like, or in an environment like Kunvara, the doors are always open. We need lots more help. I am sure that even though vocations seem to be in the decline, I'm sure that there are many, many people being called, but maybe they don't know where to go. And if you feel this morning that you're being called, I would be delighted to hear what you have to say, because I'm certain that there are many places, that there are many people being called, but that they don't know where to go. And I think in the near future, we're being offered a place which I feel would be a great place for people to begin who wish to give their lives, dishing out and doling out their love and the mercy of God. Whether it would be in a contemplative way, not everyone is called to the active life, a contemplative way or in an active way. And then we could have Kunvaras dotted all over the country and all over the world with your help. Hopefully that all of us will go home from here with our minds made up to tap into that powerhouse, the powerhouse of God running through us, His great love and His divine mercy. Thank you for listening.